those of you who may not know, Virginia grew up in Queens, New York, and was in a loving household that was filled with music and art and culture, which is where she developed her love of multiple different types of culture and religion, which influenced her as we all got to know her later in her life. Today, Cheryl Rosen will be roaming through the gallery here and doing Facebook Live for us and getting people's interviews on what they remember about their encounters with Virginia. When did they meet her? How did they meet her? Did they play with her? Were they just really good friends? We'll figure that all out as we go along. I met Virginia in her Worcester Artist Group days and WCUW, and those were times, weren't they, for those of us who were there?
Oh boy. Jealous, I'm jealous.
And Christine is jealous. She knew Virginia in her New Hampshire iteration. I think that's a good word, iteration.
Nice to meet you.
We have John Willoughby doing Zoom for us. So for those of you at home who either couldn't make it to Worcester, Massachusetts, or who still aren't going anywhere because it's a plague, welcome and stick around. It'll be a good afternoon full of friendship and music and discovery. How about that? When you come, you will be able to get a button with Miss V on it. And scattered out throughout the room are little things that Sherry Weinstein, who coordinated a whole lot of this, thought that V would get a chuckle out of, and that you might get a chuckle out of. And you're more than welcome to help yourself to some of those things. We also have, I believe, extra copies of some of her CDs. Her most recent one, In the Sane, which I played some of on the radio the other night at WCUW during the memorial radio show that we had for her. And I think I'm gonna let Brandon get back to playing some more of BBK Roche. Good afternoon and welcome to the celebration of the life of Virginia Rubino here at Electric Haze, Worcester's own Electric Haze, 26 Harding Street, 01610, in case you're driving and trying to find us. Thank you to John Willoughby for setting up our Zoom room, for those of you catching it that way, and to Cheryl Rosen, who is wandering about with Facebook Live up and looking for your memories of our dear friend Virginia to put up in perpetuity. Yeah. We want to make sure that everybody knows a little bit about Virginia. Sherry's going to join me in a minute, and we are going to give you some background on early Miss Virginia and how she became to be the Virginia that we all knew and loved. She started out in Queens, yes, and went to Northwestern University, studied classical music. Come on up here.
Yes.
And while she was doing that, she developed her very soulful way of playing the piano and keyboards.
I have a few things.
All right.
Put this
Her
down.
soulful singing voice is behind me and has been. But I'm going to let Sherry come up here and tell you about her ventures into the California bands that she was with and her work in the California women's movement, which was quite a thing for her. She was very passionate about a lot of, as I had mentioned earlier, cultures and cultural issues. So it was no big surprise that she was involved in that as well. One of the first bands that Virginia found herself in the early 1970s was called Lizzie Tish. And they played the festival scene and the coffee house scene, and they were primarily rock and funk. And that was where Virginia was learning her rock influences to go with her bluesy, jazzy vibe. Sherry's going to tell you more about her California days. You gotta get closer to that.
I should have used a breath mint.
Oh, it's all right. Come here, right there. Nope, right there.
Right here?
Yeah, come over.
Okay.
I want the people to hear you.
Hear me? Okay, can you hear me now? I first met Virginia in early 1982. And I moved here to Worcester from New Jersey. And although I had been coming up here all my life, I actually didn't meet her till 82. Oh, I see. I'm an inch or so taller.
Yeah,
Virginia had been working at the Garden of Delights up until around the time I met her, when the Garden of Delights closed, and my cousin Princess moved on to the Culinary Institute, and I was rooming with Tinker and Beezy, which was wild. And I remember hearing Virginia perform at Amberley Crossing in 1982. That was over at the old Midtown Mall. And she was amazing. A group of us went over to hear her. And she just, you know, her presence just lit up a room. She was working at the Sole Proprietor at the time, which was a totally different restaurant from what it is now. I was living on Goulding Street. We're all in the Highland Street scene together. Eventually, Virginia became my roommate for a while. And in the 80s, she wasn't always the easiest person to live with. You know, we were young, crazy. Anything we were interested in had some kind of insane result. So she would borrow my books, though, and we would have amazing, amazing discussions. She was interested in anything esoteric or worldly. She was interested in different cultures. She was interested in astrology and numerology. We had great conversations. And I'd let her borrow my books. Some I got back, some I didn't. That was okay.
That's the risk we take when we loan our books away.
Getting some of them back, I'm sure.
No. And she was really into the punk scene. And I loved the music, but I moved up there with kind of long, fluffy hair, you know, and it wasn't fluffy by itself. It had a lot of help. And she convinced me to chop it off. She says, you don't need all this, cut it. So I punked out more and more. You know, I entered the punk scene, had a good time. But in those days, Vi and I couldn't get quite as close as friends because she had a lot of issues. She had her own personal demons to contend with. And eventually she overcame those. You know, a lot of creative people have their demons, they have their addictions, they have their ups and downs. So, you know, we still loved each other. And I would go see her bands, I would go see her solo performances, go out and dance, and sometimes I'd wake up in the morning, her band would be all over the house, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on the sofa, sleeping in the bathroom, wherever they were. And she and I would be rushing for the coffee pot. After she moved to New Hampshire and met Michael Dawson, her world began to change. And I know that she met him regarding support groups for overcoming their individual demons. She stayed with him for about 14 years until he passed away. They had a beautiful relationship. They had their dogs. And, you know, every relationship has their ups and downs, but she loved him. And I remember what she was going through when he passed. Well, she was blossoming as a human being. You could see her wisdom, her compassion. I mean, she could still be a brat.
Till the very end.
Till the very end. She would occasionally fight with Fred Duzak, whom she loved very much, while he was trying to help her record, put things on YouTube. And they'd be fighting, bitching about stuff, may I say. But she loved him, and he passed away also, and it all hit her very hard. You know, Christine Nordland, who's here, was very close to her in New Hampshire and gave her all the support in the world. I mean, just so good with whatever Virginia needed. Let me allow Steph to interject something at this point.
Well, I think at this point I wanted to say thank you to Christine for her caretakership of Mo, Virginia's dog, and also handling all of Virginia's end-of-life services and doing a wonderful, wonderful job of it.
And bringing Virginia here today.
And yes, because of her, Virginia is here today. All of her little, well, oh, that's right. Virginia herself is here today. Oh, that's gonna sound great. But when you sign in, there is a box with a pretty bow that has our beloved Virginia in it. And next to that box is a box full of little buttons, which you can attach to your clothing or your bag and take with you and have a little piece of Virginia to bring home. There are also scattered about things that Christine brought from New Hampshire, from Bee's home, that should you want a bigger piece of something to remember yourself often of Virginia, you can find sprinkled about in this room and take it with you. That's what she would have wanted. She would have wanted you to have a little piece of her stuff. So, for those of you who are just joining us, I think I see some musicians who've just arrived. And yes, and we will start to have live music in a very short while. I did want to go run through all the bands by name, and the ones that I know who she was with, I'll say who was with her in these bands. And then I think Brandon, our amazing sound guy, will put on something, and then we'll figure out who wants to go first for our musical lineup, and I'll make a list, and then I will announce the first band, and we will get on with that section of our day today. And if you're still on the fence and thinking, it's kind of nice out, I think I'll just listen on Zoom. You know what? Come on. Come visit us. There's food. There's amazing. I mean, I haven't been to Electric Haze in a while because of the plague, but they have an amazing selection of beers on tap, and my husband's gonna cringe at home, but I'm gonna have a 12% by volume stout before I leave here, and I'm gonna be really happy about it. And I'm gonna drink it in memory of Virginia, and it's gonna be a great part of the day. That said, in the 70s, Virginia started off with a band called Lizzie Tish, and they did the festival circuit out in Venice, California. and eventually made it up to Berkeley, where they formed High Risk in 1974 and made an album that is pretty good. And we have listened to a little bit of it already, and we will listen to more of it later. Virginia was on keyboards, vocals, and did a lot of the composing on High Risk. Bobby Jackson on bass guitar, Cynthia Mason, flute and sax, and Sandy Ahida on congas and percussion. So that's quite an interesting combination. Baby Karosh came about in 1976 and was courted by Olivia Records and made the album Baby Karosh. It was founded by Tika Pole, Janet Jake Lampert, Peggy Mitchell. Virginia showed up after a little while and did some composing, has quite a few songs on that album. Matu Feliciano, Sandy Ahida again, Robin Flowers, and Cindy Mason. Touring members also included Jareen O'Brien, Jasmine Telfar, and Linda Tillery. When she came back to Worcester in the early 80s when I met her, I was a child.
Baby.
I was but a baby. I had just graduated high school when I met her. The band Where's Virginia was founded, and there is of course a cute tale to go with the name of that band, because sometimes people would be practicing and they'd be, where's Virginia? And then they'd be sitting up on stage going, where's Virginia? From the stage. So that's how that album came to be made. And that was Virginia on vocals and keyboards, John Willoughby doing our Zoom meeting, on guitar,
It was on YouTube and on tapes.
Tony Serrato on drums, and Ken Wheelock on guitar, Ted Carlson on bass, and Ken Wheelock produced the tapes, but no official recordings were made, but you can find it if you look hard enough on YouTube. Then came Dream Flight, Stratus Funk, amazing box band. And some forms of it included Virginia on vocals and keyboards, Terry Walker on bass, Willie Pye on drums, Jimmy Hughes and Jimmy Walker on vocals, and Barry, who nobody can remember Barry's last name. Does anybody here know Barry? So I can give him full
His
credit?
last name?
Nobody. Crickets.
Ed Art might know when he shows up.
All right, I'll ask again later, because I would like to give Barry appropriate credit. Then we have Virginia Rubino and the Boy from Mars, one of my favorite people, British sax player Paul Walker, who I have truly missed. That man is an amazing hairdresser. I miss that boy. And then we have Virginia leaving Worcester for New Hampshire in the mid-90s. And her New Hampshire recordings, starting in 2014, is the CD In the Sane, which I like a lot off that album, I might add. And then we have Love Is Found, an EP from 2016. And there's another one
There was.
that's not on this list.
It's the desert one.
Yes.
It's what?
The one she did with
Tucson.
Ken out in the desert in Arizona.
All right.
Or something like that.
A desert album. Who knew she was in Arizona in the desert?
With
When did she find time to do that?
That was her
With
perfect
Ken Wheeler.
way. She loved it because the heat. She loved it.
Aha, it was an EP. I shall have to discover this and listen to it.
We'll make sure to find you a copy.
Oh, thank you.
There's one copy.
Don't desert.
All right, don't desert me.
Listen, don't desert me.
Oh, don't desert me. Oh, cute pun, Virginia.
I had
Another
forgotten
version of
about it.
I like it. I like it a lot. So there are 9 songs on this. It was done in 2015 when she went to the desert. All right, Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that.
A vision quest.
A vision, of course, she went on a vision quest in the desert. All right, so Brandon is gonna throw on something musical. I'm gonna go meet with Lydia, and I think I see Michael out there. Hi.
See if you can
And,
get up
oh,
here.
hello. So, I'm gonna make a list. It's gonna be small, I think, but that list may expand. And then I'll come up and tell you who's gonna play, and we will have fun.
Share memories on breaks.
Thank you very much to Lydia, Jim, and Michael. Nice set, and we get to hear them again. If you're smart, you'll come to Electric Haze, 26 Harding Street in Worcester, 01610, in case you need to plug it in the GPS. And you will join the celebration of the life of Virginia Rubino, who sadly left the planet June 11th, 2022. The other night, I did a radio show memorial on our local community radio station, WCUW 91.3 FM, or wcuw.org//listen. And I interviewed Teak Ole, who was one of the founding members of several of Virginia's early bands. And even though we had done a pre-interview, and I asked the same questions, I got a different answer. So Teak sent a message, which I'm gonna read, amending some of her statements. She has some memories about Virginia from the 70s, when Virginia had graduated Northwestern University and gone to Venice, California to find herself and become the woman that we all knew. Teak says, V had stellar musical abilities on piano, vocals, and composition. She was a joy to listen to. V used to go to the Venice Pavilion alone to play the piano on stage because they had a baby grand. It was a Greek-style theater with seats rising higher than stage and all cement. So she would be there singing and playing, and street people would hear it. People on the street would come in, and before you know it, V would have an audience. And she did this on a regular basis. Sometimes other musicians would join her. She was charismatic in her personality, and everyone adored her. In Hollywood, we were in a band called Lizzie Tish. And we played many places like the Whiskey A Go-Go, the Ash Grove, and the Bitter End West. Al Jarreau was beginning his career in the cocktail lounge in the Bitter End West while we were out on the big stage. During our break, we always went in to support Al with his amazing vocals and his piano player, Junior. Al was immediately struck by Virginia's singing voice when he came out to hear us on the big stage. I have many amazing Virginia stories, and I hope to share them with many over the coming days. She was a bright star who was loved by many and inspired many. Teak Ole. I'm going to invite Miss Christine to come on up to the stage and read a letter that's very personal, but that she wants to share.
First of all, I cry all the time at everything, so I'm gonna probably cry a lot. I've been fortunate to have control over her estate, and I'm going through it all as respectfully and lovingly as I can, which I didn't have time to do with other people in my life, and I'm so glad I have the time to do that for her. I'm going through every piece of paper she had. I found a lot of letters and journals, and it's so amazing to learn about, the inner workings of this really lovely, loving, trying so hard to be a good person, woman. I was going through just notebooks from high school, and most people would just throw them out, but I just went through every page and nothing was important. And then I found this letter tucked in between the pages, and I know that most of you know that she struggled in her life with some demons, the monkey on her back, she would call it. And she hurt her mom, and her mom hurt her. And I found this letter and just tucked in a notebook from after when she was in school, so I don't know how it ended up in there. It's a letter she wrote, and it never looks like she sent it. There's no postmark or anything, so I think she decided against sending it, which is really sad. But it just shows, she just cared so much about everybody. Dear Mom, a few changes. We are looking for a new bass player and drummer. We have 2 people playing with us temporarily. Whether or not they stay is not known at the present. I don't know what will happen with this group, but whatever happens, it's a motion in the right direction. Remember how you explained to me that when one is really a musician, one does nothing else but play music? Well, that is how my life is. I finally am playing, writing or listening to music all of my waking hours. I doubt if anything else in life will concern me as much. I feel as though this is what you truly wanted from life, to play piano all the time. I understand this more and more, how much tremendous potential you have. I learned and gained this from you, that independent, incredible energy. I love you so much. Always remember that. If you could, would you send me some pictures of me and you when I was younger? Times are hard, but rest assured, I will always take care of my health. Love you, Virginia. This is just the smallest amount of what I found of her, and I don't know what to do with her amazing legacy, but I'm not gonna break it apart, and I'm gonna hold on to it, and I don't know, maybe someday do something, or someone will want to do something. But she was just amazing, and I'm so glad that I got to know her. I heard other people talk about how she hurt people in her life when she was younger, and when I knew her, she had gotten through all of that, and she just was amazing. And people would say you couldn't get close to her, and she seemed angry and whatever, and I never saw that. So she ended her life just full of joy and love, and she got to where she wanted to be. And in her journals, all she ever talked about was how she just wanted to get back on stage and play with other musicians, and she did that. And so she fulfilled her dreams, and I'm really proud of her, because that was really hard. And yeah, she was amazing. And if anybody wants anything of hers, I mean, I brought pictures. Please take pictures. I have extras, and I brought some mementos over there. Please take something, I can't keep everything, and I know she would like people to have just a little bit of her energy. But know that she talked about, I've never been here, and I feel like I know you guys all, because she talked about being down here all the time. She loved it here. She loved it. She shouldn't have been driving down here, and she did, because she loved it so much. Oh, yes. She shouldn't have been driving across our town, but that's another story. Yeah, so.
Yeah, well, she would pick Sherry and I up.
Oh, yeah.
After she got here to go someplace, and I would beg, I have a license. I can drive. In this traffic, you should let me.
I told my youngest son, I have 5 boys, and she called them the little lads. How are the little lads? And every time I saw her, every single time, she would make me tell her exactly what was going on in each one of their lives, because she loved them. And the youngest one was around when she was not driving well and walking through town, and I'd say, if you see Virginia and she offers you a ride, tell her no, you're fine, just you want to walk.
Keep walking.
So thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
All right, thank you, Christine. We appreciate you sharing that, and that was lovely. And we know that you took as much care with Virginia's things and Virginia's end of life as anyone possibly could have wished for, and we appreciate that greatly. Coming up next, we are going to listen to a little bit more recorded Virginia, I do believe, Brandon. And then we will get back to live music. I see Walter has walked in the room. Walter, are you playing today?
Chuck and Mud.
Chuck and Mud. They're on their way. All right, so you're gonna play with Chuck and Mud.
Right.
Awesome. So in a little while, when Chuck and Mud arrive, we will set them up. And Lydia Fortune and Jim Heffernan and Michael Wingfield are still in the building, so I think we can get a second set out of them in a few minutes once they replenish the hydration and get a little snack in. I have great faith we can do that, so Brandon, what album are we going to next? Love is Found. We will be hearing from Love is Found next here at 26 Harding Street, the Electric Haze, in memoriam of Virginia Rubino. Okay, so thank you to Lydia and Phil. 2 sets this afternoon that were very lovely to listen to. I have a letter that was sent from Princess of the Garden of Delights, for those of you who remember the Garden of Delights. Over 40 years, but still together. The connections made through the garden have lasted lifetimes and beyond. Too many have passed, most recently Virginia Rubino, Fandango named Miss Piggy. She wanted to get it all and give it all. Virginia was the only garden employee I never hired. She was brought on by Mame, JC, during my 2-month trip from Israel to England. Our first meeting defined it all. I walked into the garden and V was sitting with Theta Light, Joanne Barnard's husband. They were at table 5 in the middle of the restaurant. The smoking section was tables 6 through 8, but Virginia had moved the ashtray for her cigarette. I said something about smoking section signs and ashtrays on other tables, but she blew me off and said that it was perfectly acceptable for her to smoke where she was. She still didn't know who I was, as Theta Light did not give the game away. Being a Scientologist, he was happy to watch the situation unfold. I don't remember how long it took for us to exchange names, but when she heard Princess, her eyes popped out like in a cartoon. We could not stop laughing at each other from that point on. I truly believe that the garden brought out the best parts of ourselves and that each soul who entered that space provided an essential element to the whole. The people we were in those years continue to amaze me. The Fandangos have spread far and wide. An article was posted recently about working at the garden, and it turned out to be a delivery guy who is now a healer about 20 minutes from me in California. I'm so grateful that the garden continues to blossom in each of us. I remember and cherish each and every one of you. Signed, Prink. Should you have a memory similar or different that you'd like to share, Cheryl Rosen is running around the room when she's not staring at me up here, recording for Facebook Live, and she would love to interview you and post it. Coming to the stage next after this short interlude, which we will use to play some of Virginia's older music, I think, Brandon? Something from the 70s, perhaps? There we go. Coming to the stage after a short break will be Chuck Mudd and Walter Crockett. I haven't got to announce that in so many years, I don't even remember the last time I did it. but I think it was for Sober in the Sun. And that, for me, was a long time ago. So it's great to see you guys, and I can't wait to hear what this iteration sounds like. Don't forget to tip your bartender, and we will be right back.